It's a slow, warm Saturday morning of 2004. Four Kids is running in the background as you eat your breakfast. But suddenly, something catches your eye. There's a show on TV, something you've never seen before. Not that you know every animated show airing on Four Kids. You are turning 9 years old after all, so all this childish nonsense media does not interest you anymore. It's not cool. But the show that comes on looks special. It's somehow different. It's bright, it's sparkly, and the girls are astonishingly stylish. You learn the name of the show. It's Winx Club. Winx Club? What a silly name. Who would watch something that looks like this anyway? It's foolish and way too girly. You're way too old and way too cool for cartoons. But you still watch the episode because there's infinite time to kill. It's June after all, and the summer break just began. But you come across it again next week, accidentally, of course, and watch the next episode. And then the next, and the next, and again, and you don't miss a single one. The next thing you know, your bedroom looks like this, your shelves look like this, your sketchbook looks like this, and your life is filled with these girls. And you just want more. You buy more toys, you draw every single outfit from the show, and you love it. And now you are obsessed forever. You become Winx. You are now in Winx Club. Hi, hello, and welcome. Hopefully, I didn't jump scare you there. Today, as you probably already guessed, we are talking about Winx Club. I will talk and show my thoughts about the show while I draw the redesigns in the background. You know, usual stuff that we do on this little channel of ours. So, without further talking, let's just get started. But before we actually get started, I'd like to provide you with some disclaimers. So, disclaimer number one, spoilers. I will be discussing plot points in this video and will be spoiling basically everything. So if you are, sensitive with that, just proceed with caution. Disclaimer number two, I know Winx has comics, games, movies, but in this video I will be discussing the show and the show only. More specifically, seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 softly, not as much as the first 3. Disclaimer 3, this is definitely not a fixed video. I love the look of the show so much. The redesigning I'm doing is just for fun and for fun's sake only. Also, I will not be getting into everything. Each season has like 26 episodes, guys, and a million arching plot lines. I'll only be getting into what I think is relevant to the observation or analysis I will be making. So yeah, I guess that's it. So let's just get right into it. If you've been conscious in the mid to late 2000s, you probably watched or at least witnessed some parts of this show. But if that's not the case, let me bring you up to the speed. Winx Club is an Italian, not American because I thought it was American as a child, but an Italian animated show created and directed by also an Italian animator, Eugenio Straffi. The series is set in a magical universe inhabited by fairies, witches, and other mythical creatures. It tells you the story of six girls who, you guessed it, are fairies. They study at a magical school, learning magical stuff while being very iconic girly girls. During the 90s, Straffi noticed that most of action cartoons were focused on male heroes. At that time, he felt that the cartoon world was devoid of female characters. He hoped to introduce an alternative show with a female lead aged 16 to 18 as he wanted to explore the psychological side of the transition to adulthood. So he decided to work on a pilot for what would later become Winx. The pilot was called Magic Bloom, but it was far from the show it ended up being. After it was finished and was holding test screenings, Straffy was unhappy with the audience's unenthusiastic reaction to the character's outdated clothing style. So, in true artist spirit, he just scrapped it, the whole pilot, and started working on it again, even though the Magic Bloom pilot cost him around 100k euros. Which, to be honest, I am glad he did this. These early designs for the girls, there's just, no whimsy we associate and love with the show. For example, look at Flora or Musa, they just look completely different, and I'm really happy that they decided to redesign everything. Rainbow SPA, a company owned by Straffy himself and responsible for producing Winx Club, decided to completely redo the project and looked for new collaborators, designers from Italy's fashion companies, to update the look of the characters and give it a brighter and stronger palette, more aligned with teenage fashions of the 2000s. Our objective was to be trendy but with a futuristic twist, says Eugenio Straffi. Otherwise, you risk having clothing styles that go out of date too soon. The man was thinking 12 steps ahead, I think. The changes went beyond just clothing though. Besides putting a modern gloss on the characters' wardrobes and hairstyles, the designers also changed the color palette of the whole show, opting for much brighter and stronger collection of hues more in tune with twin fashions of the time. So we basically have a market full of girls who were fans of Sailor Moon, and at the time, I think Western animation wanted to emulate that. And Sailor Moon was an inspiration for Winx and Witch, which was coming out at the same time, as you probably already know. And I just want to mention here, I just made a whole video about Witch recently. Check it out if you're interested. And I will get into the Winx versus Witch debacle by the end of the video. There's just difference in circumstances with these shows that I'll be getting more into that section. But until then, I won't be mentioning Witch. And the reason I want to get into that topic at all was because when both of the shows were coming out and airing, I was the target demographic. So trust me, if you were around in that time, these two shows were compared to each other constantly. I think they are compared to each other to this day. Well, obviously they are because I am doing that right now. But anyway, after all this work, audience studies, inspiration gathering, etc., the first season of Winx finally aired on January 28th, 2004 in Italy. But on June 19th, it aired on 4Kids dubbed in English. And it was massively successful right off the bat. Worth mentioning that, according to RAI, an Italian public broadcasting company, the show attracted both female and male audiences, with boys and girls aged between 4 to 14 tuning into the series. The female audience only had a 3% majority over their male counterparts. The show took off almost instantly. One of the reasons being that it looked like nothing else on TV at that time. The sparkly outfits, the very unique and stylized look, it was impossible for it not to catch a viewer's eye. Of course, all that was followed by merchandise, baby. Across the show's first 10 years on air, more than 6,000 pieces of tie-in merchandise were released by external licensing companies, not internal, external licensing companies. As of in 2014, Winx Club merchandise licenses generated around 50 million euros annually. As of 2016, over 100 different doll collections had been designed and more than 60 million Winx Club dolls had been sold. In 2014, 25 million copies of the comics had been sold worldwide. So These girls were printing money like crazy. The numbers and sheer volume of the merchandise produced in that time is actually insane. It's just hard to comprehend. There are definitely things in the show that, in my opinion, are there just to sell merch, and the show leans into this consumerism hellhole with the girls quite heavily too, but more so in the later seasons. I guess it was when Winx became the brand, which was around when season 4 was coming out. The brand that comes with Winx is genuinely insane. To the point that I am sure, as I said, they added some characters and outfits just to sell toys of them later. In season 4, there's this whole storyline when girls open up this shop called Love and Pets, and they are basically just selling these plushies that became alive or something. They were literally selling these toys in real life. What I mean is, in the show, Tecna adds a feature on the computer where anyone can go and quote download a pet to their home right away. It has to be a reference to an online store, right? I do think that's another problem the show faces as it goes on for more seasons. There's more emphasis on new outfits, new fairy forms, always new designs rather than, character development. So they are using all this new stuff so later they can be repurposed as sellable dolls. Even in seasons 3 and 4, there are just screen time dedicated purely to girls trying new outfits or them just simply going shopping, which is completely okay. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but there are just characters that would use some screen times for some development, and I'm just sad that they didn't use it for that. As for the seasons go on, Winx Club, in my opinion, became more and more a merch line that also has animated show rather than vice versa. Okay, so we've established backstory, the backbone of the production. There's also this lawsuit from freaking Disney that I won't be getting into, but long story short, Disney, being a sore loser, sued Rainbow for copyright infringement. And thankfully, Disney lost, which is a massive W because Rainbow at the time was relatively a small studio, especially compared to a giant like Disney. So the fact that they were able to win the lawsuit is actually very good. Also, I wanted to mention, I know there's a whole thing with the different dubs and translations. The show was dubbed in English by 4Kids and Nickelodeon, I think a bit later, which these two versions can be surprisingly very different from each other at times. I didn't know which one to watch, so I made the decision. I watched the first half seasons in the 4Kids dub and the second half seasons in the Nick dub. Was it painful? Yes. Both are available on YouTube, but I do think that 4Kids dub is a slightly better version. Now that we've got all of that out of the way, time to ask the question. Was the show itself in its prime time actually good? The answer is obviously more complicated than yes or no, hence me making this video. Plus, I have a lot of feelings when it comes to this animated series. I am biased and nostalgic while also not being as attached to the story as some of you may be. I think it has lows and highs, but overall it's pretty enjoyable. The show has really good setups and really good concepts, but the problem is that they fail to resolve or execute said concepts well, in my opinion. That being said, I am not here to tell you that another show that had a primarily female audience is stupid actually. No, 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 no. I think we have those more than enough. And my point is never to hate on the show. Even though I criticize it, know that it comes from a loving place. Season 1. Season 1, Episode 1 opens with Bloom, a girl from fictional city of Gardenia. She walks in on a fight between a fairy named Stella and a gang of trolls led by an ogre. Bloom intervenes and in doing so unknowingly activates her own magical powers, for the first time. And after all that, Stella introduces her to the world of magic and the College of Althea for fairies. By the end of the episode, Bloom and her parents travel to Magic's, which is this magic dimension, for them to see the school, and Bloom decides that she wants to enroll. Obviously, who wouldn't want to enroll in a magical fairy school? In episode 2, Bloom and Stella both arrive at Althea, where we meet the other three girls, Flora, Musa, and Tecna. We also meet the three main antagonists, the Tricks, who study in the witch school nearby. There's also a third school where like all the boys go, but the two schools are more important. So in the first two episodes, the introductions are done well in my opinion. It's like whimsy and fun, the characters seem pretty cool. The way they name things though, it's just something I wanted to bring up. It's like a pun after pun basically. I know this will come off as shocking to you, but English is not actually my first language. I know, it's almost impossible to tell through my flawless accent. What I'm trying to say is that when I was rewatching the show, now that I can actually speak English, I see what they were doing with the naming. The names of the characters are not puns, but they do sound something like my 2-year-old nephew would pick. For example, the girl who likes music is named Musa, the girl who likes technology is named Tecna. Flora is of course a fairy of flowers. There's Stella, which in Italian means star, and she is a fairy of sun, moon, and well, stars. And there's Bloom. Bloom's name, well, she's going to bloom into a beautiful fairy as the series progresses, I guess. Also, they call themselves Winx, but now I realize it's probably because Winx sounds a lot like Winx, like, wings, because they are fairies. Did you get? And also there's this antagonist Trix, the evil witch trio, who are constantly after our protagonist fairies. And Trix is obviously a pun for tricks, as in Tricks, because they like to play tricks. Anyway, the naming is cute, and even though it does sound something like a child would come up with, it's not really a criticism. That kind of childish whimsicality is exactly what secures Winx in a very special place in my cold, cold heart. As the series goes on, the season focuses on the truth behind Bloom's magical identity and the source of her powers, which turn out to be the dragon flame, the spark responsible for the creation of all magical life and the most broken, inconsistent power in this universe, if you ask me. The Tricks, three witch sisters named Icy, Darcy, and Stormy, try to guess what powers do they have. Well, they are the season's main villains, pursuing the dragon flame, which they believe at first is contained in Stella's royal ring. But through trial and error, they determine that it is actually Bloom who possesses it. Not Ring, but Bloom. They eventually manage to steal it from her, meaning powers from Bloom, and use it to summon the army of darkness to conquer the realm of magics. Spoiler alert, they fail, of course. Bloom manages to get her power back, and the season concludes like everyone is happy. The first season focuses heavily on Bloom, well, because she is the main character, obviously. I'm not sure how I feel about Bloom. As a child, I never resonated with her at all. For a main character, she always felt a bit self-centered, and not in a character flaw way, but more like in a let's remind the viewer who's the main character all the time way, if that makes sense at all. I think as the series goes on, Bloom becomes a bigger and bigger problem, but in season 1, her taking the spotlight makes sense. And obviously, I don't have a problem with that, but I'll talk about that Bloom problem that arches over the whole show in more detail a bit later. Still, the main arc of the season is Bloom's identity crisis. While Bloom is initially happy at Althea, she becomes increasingly discouraged, feeling she doesn't belong in the magic dimension like her friends do who grew up there. This self-doubt is what Trix exploit to strip her of her powers, and it is also what she has to overcome to get them back. Daphne, who is Bloom's long-lost older sister, guides her to a nearby lake and explains that the dragon flame can never be truly taken from her. It is tethered to her self esteem. So, by sheer willpower, Bloom regenerates her abilities, returns to Althea, defeats the Tricks, and ends the invasion. Even though there are some, questionable moments throughout the season, Season 1 Bloom is easily my favorite. Also, the Tricks as antagonists are very compelling in my opinion. They are these typical mean girls in the beginning, but as the time goes on, they only become more and more unhinged, so much so that they get expelled and even the witch school turns against them, solidifying my hunch that the only difference between Althea and Cloud Tower is basically aesthetics because they do fight alongside each other in season 1 final battle. Tricks are the I just want to see the world burn type of characters, and not gonna lie, it's one of my favorite kinds, especially when it's three sassy girls. I like the message of Bloom's character arc in season 1. It's pretty solid and no notes there. But where this season suffers is with the core cast and the uneven depth provided for each girl. The supporting Winx are mostly defined by a single trait each in the season. Stella likes shopping, Flora likes flowers and is gentle, Musa likes to sing, Tecna is logical, which works as a functional ensemble but leaves a little room for individual depth. Brief glimpses into their personal lives do appear. Stella's parents are revealed to be going through a divorce, for example, and Muse's mother is revealed to have died. But these are treated as like background details rather than developed storylines. It also feels like the show prioritizes developing the girls in relation to their romantic storylines more than individually. I will talk about romance a bit later, but the problem is definitely already evident in season 1. But hey, you know what? The show just started. It's the first season. There's only so much time and so many episodes we can have. So I say let's cut season 1 a slack in that regard. After all, it did a very solid job with the girl they chose to focus on, which is, of course, Bloom. The writing quality in season 1 is also notably stronger than what the show would become in later years. The serialized structure, with an ongoing mystery about Bloom's origins threading through smaller episode plots, is well managed across 26 episodes. One area worth mentioning critically is that the show leans heavily on misunderstandings and withholding of information as plot devices. Characters repeatedly fail to communicate things that would resolve conflicts immediately, which becomes a noticeable pattern. I found myself like screaming at the screen at times because, oh my god, just talk to each other, please. It was so frustrating at times, but honestly, to be fair, I guess teenagers often can act like that, so it's okay. Moving on to season 2. My hopes for season 2 are that they would give the other girls more screen time and development and make the friendships more focus of the series and make them stand out more. Because, well, in season 1, they are friends, yes, but I feel like the girls need more chemistry between each other. Sorry for interrupting, but since we are doing redesigns, let me say a couple words about what we're doing here. As you can see for Bloom, my very first victim, I changed her outfit just a little bit. I thought giving her palette a bit more yellow that would suit her really nicely. I wanted to emphasize her dragon powers and her fire powers, so I tried to give her this scale texture. Overall, I went with a more practical look than she has in the show originally. Also, I gave her freckles. Not sure if you can see them here, but since she is a redhead, I think it would give her more unique features than she has in the show. So let me know what you think about this. I am quite happy how this one turned out. So yeah. So seasons 2 starts with a new girl, aka the best girl, Aisha and Layla. If you're watching 4Kids dub, I don't remember which dub uses Layla and which one uses Aisha, but I'll call her Aisha in this video. It opens with her trying to save these little fairies called pixies, but sadly she fails, so tired, beaten, and exhausted, she is able to make her way to Alfea, where the girls find her unconscious. Aisha, in my opinion, is the most interesting new character the show introduces across, well, ever. Her isolated upbringing as a princess, whose parents scrutinized her every movement, left her with few friends, the pixies of Pixie Village being her closest companions. And we'll have to talk about the pixies. They are God, I hate these little bats so much. I am so sorry. I don't know what the public sentiment is around those little things, but I'm gonna go on a tiny rant here, so bear with me, please. They are just so annoying. Maybe it's me, but I just cannot stand the baby voices. It drives me nuts. I really hate how they chose to dub them. Like, whenever they speak, it's like nails on the chalkboard. And I get it. They want to appeal like a very young audience with them. Children maybe aged like 3, 4, maybe even 5 years old who do still speak like that, but I also really don't like their design, not the design, but the outfit more specifically. Okay, this show is already a bit childish, which I am not complaining about. I am 27 years old. Of course, the show will seem childish for me. Hopefully, it will seem childish for me because if it was not, it would say a lot more about me than about the show. I am 18 years older than the target demographic for this, but even if I was watching it as a 9-year-old child, I would still really dislike Pixie voices. And how do I know? Because I did watch it as a 9-year-old and I remember despising these characters. They just feel out of place here. It felt like the show was telling me, goo goo gaga, viewer, goo goo gaga. Also, design on this pixie in particular, oh my god, shady as fuck. I hate it. I hate it so much. Who designed this? It reminds me one of those creepy bikini swimsuit for like 6-year-old children. Icky as fuck. Okay, while I think my crash out is kind of valid here, I do see the narrative purpose they serve in season 2 and what they were generally trying to do with the Pixie slash Winx Fairy pairings. And it's not like a complete shameless plug for the new toy merch like it is with Love and Pets thing in season 4. So my theory at first was that pixies had to be the opposite of girls, pushing them past their comfort zones. Like Flora is very shy and the pixie she is linked, bonded or whatever it is the complete opposite of that. Her name is Chara, and unlike Flora, she can't seem to shut her mouth. Or Musa's pixie, Toon, who is a pixie of good manners. She keeps nagging Musa to be more ladylike when Musa is never shown to be extremely unladylike, whatever the hell that means. I get that aspect in Flora and Chata's bond. Flora's shyness and low self-esteem is definitely a flaw, because it holds her back in many ways. But I fail to see how Musa being tomboyish is a flaw. Like, it can be a character development tool, yes, and I'll get into why in a minute, but it's not a flaw. And most importantly, it's not even shown that she has no manners or anything of sort. If they wanted Musa to be leaning into that direction, like for example, Toph from Avatar is a good example for this. She is definitely very tomboyish and can be described as someone who does not have manners. Then maybe, I would understand. But Musa does not stand out from the rest of the group in that way at all. And by the way, I'm not saying that Toph is flawed because of those traits. Obviously, I don't want to get into Toph's character in the Winx video. She's infinitely more layered character, but you know what I mean, right? And then there's Tekna and Digit, where my theory just completely falls on its ass. Tekna is by far one of the least developed girls in the group alongside her arc is all unlogical and technical, and I need to learn how to show feelings, which is not a bad arc, but it grows stagnant like really fast. Tekna always starts her sentences with the logical solution, the logical way, logical this and that, which would not be a problem if the show engaged with it in any meaningful way. She is underdeveloped, and that's why my theory about fairies and their bonded pixies being complete opposite falls on its ass when it comes to these two. Digit is basically mini Tekna. I just failed to see any contrast or interesting correlation between the two, which is a shame. They could have made a pixie for her who's more in touch with her feelings or like is extremely sensitive or something, and she would push Tekna out of her comfort zone. But of course, that's not what we get. Anyway, back to season 2. The second season follows the Winx Club's second year at Althea, where they work toward earning an enhancement to their powers called Charmix. The Tricks are freed from their prison by Lord Darkar, who becomes their new leader. Lord Darkar is the antagonist of the season. He's an ancient entity of pure darkness, framed as the polar opposite of the dragon flame, and therefore Bloom. Darkar absorbs energy. He was also the master of ancestral witches, meaning he was the original cause of Domino's destruction, which is Bloom's home planet, and by extension, the root cause of most of the events in season 1. Lord Darkar as a villain is a step down from the Tricks. He has this scary design and conceptually has a definitive role, but as a standalone character, he's just so forgettable. It feels like he is there as a plot device to move things around for the protagonist to react to. Arguably, that's true for all villains in every show ever, but he is just a concept rather than a fleshed out character like Icy, Darcy, and Stormy. Plus, I might have missed something, but the stakes did not feel too important. Darkar is collecting these 4 different codexes that will help him gain power, and while yes, you don't want a literal incarnate of evil to become more powerful, obviously, but the threat just feels way more abstract. Whereas the season 1's stakes were rooted within Bloom and her character development, but the threat was way more personal. Of course, there's a dark Bloom subplot in season 2. The idea that Bloom's dragon flame, the source of her power and herself, could be inverted and weaponized is a strong concept. It also gives Bloom some grit and, flavor that I think she desperately needs as the show goes on. But the Dark Bloom subplot sadly falls under the same umbrella of problems when it comes to her character. On paper, it sounds great, but the resolution for that storyline, I don't like it. Sky, who is Bloom's love interest, and oh, don't worry, we will talk about him later too, ends up bringing her back from the dark side anime style through a declaration of love rather than anything Bloom actively does for herself, which is a notable regression from how her agency was handled in season 1. It's not a big problem, but I'll elaborate on that a bit in a second. There's also a grooming storyline between Bloom and this weirdo new teacher, which of course is not called the grooming arc and is never addressed as such, but the way it's presented, it's hard to call it anything else. Grooming storylines in these shows are always a question mark for me because I can't tell if they are doing this on accident or on purpose, and that is because it was made in the early 2000s and conversations about that sort of thing were much more taboo and untouched than it is today. So I can't say for sure what the writer's goal was here. I don't want to dive into that too much. There's a lot to discuss, but if you want to see a video about that storyline specifically, Lisa Fevral, I hope I'm saying her name right, has a really good video about it, so check it out. As I said in the beginning, I wanted season 2 to develop the girls into full-fledged characters and also to develop the chemistry and the friendship between them. Well, season 2 does that, kinda. You see, in this season, the Charmix power-up system is introduced. Basically, each fairy earns her Charmix by overcoming a specific personal fear or emotional block. It's a cool concept on paper, power tied to personal growth, but in practice, it has some issues, with some Charmix moments feeling genuinely earned and others rushed or underwritten. It's here that I can confidently say that writers definitely have favorites in the room and they do not shy away from expressing that. Stella's moment is probably the most surprising of the group given her established personality. Throughout season 2, Stella and Aisha crash repeatedly. Their personalities are almost opposites. The tension between them builds to a point where Aisha just isolates herself, feeling like she doesn't fit in and she doesn't belong within the group. That happens multiple times throughout the show, and let me tell you, Stella can be very inconsiderate and downright mean sometimes, which surprisingly I do not hate. I think it suits her pretty well. Anyway, Stella, instead of letting it go or waiting for Aisha to come around like she usually does, goes after her. What earns her Charmix is not just the apology, but the specific thing she admits, that she also feels left out sometimes, and that the confidence she projects is not the whole picture. For a character the show had mostly played for vanity jokes up to this point, it is a genuinely humanizing moment and one of the better pieces of character writing in the season. Stella is one of those characters I didn't think I'd like when I first set out to rewatch this whole thing. Her character is just surprisingly more complex than I remembered. She's definitely one of the more developed girls in the whole show. Aisha earned her charmings by conquering her fear of being alone, realizing she needs courage to help her friends. The backstory context makes it make more sense since Aisha grew up isolated in her kingdom. It works on its own terms, but the broader irony is that her character arc was essentially complete before this moment. And let me elaborate on that. So, she wants friends, and once she gets them, meaning Winx girls, she is anxious about keeping them. It's also shown that as a result of that, Aisha is scared of the dark, but that storyline is resolved not in the episode where she gets Charmix, but in the episode where she goes to club with Musa. And in that episode, there is already this looming anxiety with her that she'll be left behind, but the girls come for her rescue and help her anyway, literally pulling her out from the darkness. Overcoming the fear of loneliness is definitely a strong beat for a character, but the show had already resolved it there. So once she overcomes that same thing again, it didn't feel like much, it just seems recycled. Aisha wanted most was to escape her rigid, prime and proper princess life. The show plans a character goal and then fulfills it pretty soon after, leaving subsequent seasons scrambling to find new conflicts for her. This is a pattern that would define how the show handles her in seasons 3 and 4 with diminishing results. Aisha is one of my favorite characters easily. She is definitely one of my favorites out of the six. She is definitely flawed but likable. She is given struggle pretty often and they are relatable. So yeah, I like Aisha's character and I will get into more stuff about her in later. Tekna earns her charmix by telling Timmy how she truly feels about him and allowing herself to cry, an important moment for a character like her. Her relationship with Timmy mirrors this. They are both awkward around feelings and tend to retreat into technical language when things get personal. The Charmix moment comes when she abandons that defense mechanism entirely. I like that. I think it definitely makes a lot of sense for Tekna. I don't want to diagnose a character because, well, I'm not a smart person. I don't have the knowledge or the competence to do that. As I was watching, I did think that they wanted to code Tekna as autistic. That theory of mine was quickly debunked though, since it's explained that this whole logical thing is just part of her culture and her planet Zenith, rather than it being strictly a Tekna thing. And now that I think about it, I think it would be so much fun and so much more unique if we learn that her home planet Zenith is actually a very emotionally mature, emotionally vulnerable, emotionally open planet, and Tekna was just odd one out. That would be interesting, but well, everything about Tekna has to be technical. Like her pixie, her boyfriend, her planet, everything. They don't bother to give her any contrast for some reason. I know I'm not the one to speculate that Tekna is autistic coded, but she has some traits that could be read as that. But if I'm wrong, feel free to correct me. I just guess that it's one of those in the eye of the viewer things. However you want to relate or perceive her, it's up to you. Flora earns her Charmix by finally confessing her love for Helia, a guy she barely knows, by the way, overcoming her deep shyness and emotional paralysis. For a character whose whole shtick is being gentle and quiet, the irony is that she is the worst at expressing her own feelings, and in the Charmix is the show acknowledging that she has finally broken through that wall. It's consistent to her character, and this is the best Flora gets. If you like her, you have to hold on to this moment because she is basically forgotten after that for a very long time. At least up until season 4, which is all I've seen, so forgive me if she like gets something in season 7 or something, but yeah. It's such a shame because I really like Flora. I think she can be a super interesting character, but the show gives her almost zero internal conflicts. And even in this Charmix acquiring moment, she is just defined through Helia. After getting him, it's all done. Nothing we can do for her. Sorry. And there's Musa. Musa was my favorite character growing up. Now, I don't really know why, but I did like her. She earned her Charmix by placing her trust in Riven, an act of emotional vulnerability given their complicated history. Riven and oh, we will talk about Riven, all right? Anyway, he had been manipulated by Darcy in season 1, which caused real damage to his relationship with Musa and established him as someone difficult to trust, which is deserved. He was a jerk in season 1, and honestly, in season 2, and honestly, in season 3. Tension between them is still there. As many fans will agree, Musa's and Riven's relationship is the worst one in the show by a mile. Even though Musa herself can be a very interesting character, given her family situation, her mom being dead, and her ambitions, she faces the same problem as most girls in the group. She is almost always exclusively explored through Riven, which, listen, I know people are affected by other people all the time, especially if it's a relationship romantic in nature, but I would just like to see more of just her. Bloom earns her Charmix by believing in her team again. She admits that she has lost faith in the group lately, apologizes to them and to Sky. After admitting that, she earns her Charmix. And correct me if I am missing something here, but Bloom earning her Charmix is tied to her acting as a leader to the group and the crisis they've been experiencing so far. They've been very unsynced in this season, so to say. And you know what? I do like that arc, but I would place it later in the show. Her feeling the pressure of keeping the group together is a good conflict, but I do feel like it's a bit early in the show and is placed oddly at this point of the story, in my opinion. I think what would have been more satisfying is something similar but with a different framing. You know, the creepy teacher I mentioned earlier, his name is Avalon. So, Avalon, of course, in a true creep's nature, tries to isolate Bloom from her friends. And in this moment, she would acknowledge that. For me personally, it would have way more satisfying if, for one, the one who comes up with the rescue idea was not Bloom, but someone else. Maybe someone like Sky, for example. And listen, I know this sounds like very, maybe a guy should call the shots instead of a girl thing, but that's not what I mean. Sky's and Bloom's relationship is probably the worst one after Musa and Riven. As much as I really don't like Sky, I think this could have been a really great moment for him to be a good and supportive boyfriend. They are on this gondola or whatever, and they need to get out, but the group, they are not in harmony, and Bloom is just burned out and exhausted. She gave up on trying to keep them together. Kai would see that and he would try to help Bloom to let her know that she is not alone and she doesn't have to do this alone. Then, through group efforts, they would start working together again. And with Bloom slowly coming along, helping with the plan, also helping Sky to call the shots and manage the situation. After that, despite the rough landing, they do make it back safely together. After that, Bloom looks up and around, seeing everyone made it safe and sound. She says,
I am very sorry, guys. I've been so distant from you lately.
her eyes would become watery, tells the girls that she missed them and wants to try to restore her faith in Winx Club again. Something sparkles on her chest. It's Charmix. She is the first one to acquire it like a true leader. I mean, in the show, she is also the first one to acquire it, but I know it's not perfect, but something like that would have been more rewarding than Bloom calling the shots effortlessly, being a good leader, even while silently having a faith in friend group crisis. I would just show her struggle more. That's what I mean. Overall, as you can guess, season 2 mostly focuses on themes of community, friendship, and trust. I actually really like that. The whole show has so much potential, but it tends to throw most of it out of the window, like I said earlier. The Dark Bloom themes are good concept, but the resolution is Sky bringing her back, which wouldn't have been too much of a problem if one, Sky and Bloom's relationship was compelling and way more impactful than it is. And two, the conflict of the season was completely different from what it is. Wouldn't it make more sense if the ones snapping Bloom out of it were the Winx girls? Or everyone, meaning the Winx girls and the specialists, which also includes Sky. I like the Winx girls version more because this show is about them after all. It would have tied up everything perfectly in my opinion, but alas, that's not what happens. Joe chooses to focus more on Sky's and Bloom's relationship instead of focusing more on them as a group, which is a shame. I'm not like super unhappy with season 2 overall, but I think it has seeds and the soil to be just so much better. Season 3 begins with Trix being dropped in the Omega Dimension, an icy prison planet where the worst criminals are locked up in the Winx universe. They freeze them in ice cubes and dump them there. It's supposed to be the worst and most inescapable place, which is so funny that's where they decided to look up Icy. Icy. She controls ice. It's in her neck. Obviously, she escapes literally immediately, and after that, they manage to free Valtor, the new main villain of the season. He is this sorcerer imprisoned in the Omega Dimension. Also, he has connections to the Winx from the start. He shares a history with Bloom's parents, who sacrificed themselves to imprison him. That little detail is already way better set up for Baltor as a villain than Darkar ever had in season 2. Season 3 is probably my favorite favorite season 1 being a close second. I really enjoyed season 3. As for the girls, they are now students at Alfea, entering their third and final year. They are told about Enchantix, a new transformation that would make them super powerful.
This year, your goal is to achieve final transformation. Should you be successful, you will gain access to new powers like fairy powder and miniaturization. This is your chance to become a full-fledged fairy.
It's really funny watching this show in 2026 because Paragonda says your goal is to achieve your final transformation. Final. Emphasis on final. I don't know about how final the Enchantix transformation is, but whatever. Before we move on, let's see how the redesign is going for Stella. Stella is the fairy of sun, moon, and stars, something I think is frequently forgotten in the show since she is mainly described as the fairy of light or just the fairy of sun. I really like the dress Stella is wearing when she meets Bloom in the first episode. I think that style really suits her and I wish she just stuck with that style with her. So I did kind of use that first dress as an inspiration and a reference for the dress she is wearing in my redesign. In her very first fairy transformation, her glove things are light cyan blue, which is a good contrast to her usually yellow and orange palette. So as the show goes on, they lean more into her pink and orange combination, which is a shame because again she is fairy of sun, moon, and stars. I would be more happy if they kept that contrasts with the cyan and orange consistent. Anyway, that's why I decided to make her boots cyan as well. Overall, I don't think I changed too much for her, but I do like this look, so let's go back to the topic we were talking about. Enchantix is earned in a very specific way through self-sacrifice for someone from your home planet. So each girl has to earn her Enchantix individually through a meaningful act, which forces the show to actually spend the time with each character separately and give them something real to do. Plus, with introducing this mechanic, there's this one big but. We are instantly reminded that Bloom's home planet was wiped out when she was born, so there's no one really for her to save. When I was watching this, it really intrigued me, since it could go down in very interesting ways for Bloom's character. Valtor is the best villain in the original run of the series, and it's not particularly close with the others. More specifically, I am comparing him to Darkar and Ogron and his goons in season 4. What separates him is that he has more substance than previous villains and the future ones too. In season 2, when it's revealed that Darkar was actually this CEO of darkness or whatever, and the witches were working under him, it was a bit hard to believe for me, you know? You are telling me that these three baddies were bossed around by this guy? Again, for some reason, I found it a bit hard to believe, but conceptually it makes sense, so it is what it is. It's canon. I'm not complaining. But Valtor, with the contrast with Darkar being this bitter, kind of used mommy issues guy, I really like that. He has infinitely more depth because of that detail. I still think that the Tricks are the best antagonists throughout the whole show, but Valtor is a close second for me. And while we are at it, let's talk about Tricks for a moment. Since season 1, they keep coming back to spite Bloom and the rest of the fairies. They are just pure-blooded Winx haters. In season 2 and 3, they are repositioned as subordinates to these men. First Darkar, then Valtor, and they don't appear in season 4. And to my knowledge, they never work alone again, and instead align themselves with these loser male characters, which is just an observation. I'm not saying that it's bad or good. I think it speaks something about their character, how the defeat in season 1 actually impacted them and their self-esteem. So I think that's the reason they just keep crawling up to these villains, even though they themselves are pretty much very powerful. But also, I would love to see some kind of character arcs for them throughout the 3 seasons. And I don't mean a redemption, because I don't want that. I really think that they work well as evil witches, but I wish we'd see something more, you know? Another thing this season does really well is expanding on its universe. We get to see other dimensions and the girls' home planets, which is always a good sign when it comes to continuation of a story. Enchantix is the best transformation in the show for me, and I don't mean the animation or music or even the outfits, but in terms of how impactful it was for me as a viewer. While Charmix did make them stronger, Enchantix is designed in a way that completely stands out from what we've seen up until this point. They have bigger wings, unlike anything we've seen before, and their magic is noticeably stronger too. By tying each girl's power upgrade to an act of selfless sacrifice, the writers built in a reason to give each Winx member a solo moment. In theory, all 6 girls get their episode, but in practice, the screen time is not evenly distributed, and to be honest, it never really was. I think the themes of season 3 are growing up, letting go, accepting your responsibilities, all that kind of stuff. The Enchantix transformations are framed as kind of maturation since you can't earn them selfishly or immaturely. There's a reading of the whole season as being about the transition from adolescence into something more adult, which tracks with the girls being in their 3rd and final year at Alfea. My favorite arc this season has to be Stella's. I really love the direction they are taking her. I love how they just took away everything she held dear and took pride in over this last season. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but Stella is definitely the most mean and entitled one out of the group. She is the richest one, she is the most spoiled one, but don't get me wrong, she is also very generous. She does not flaunt her wealth in any point. She just has a bit of an attitude towards the girls. I live for these moments. She is funny, she is sarcastic, she never holds back her sass, never. That's actually, unsurprisingly, what made me like her. She is very entertaining to watch. This season she learns that not only are her parents not getting back together, as I mentioned, she is a child of divorce, but her dad is marrying this literal evil stepmother type who is determined to push Stella away from her home and her inheritance. And on top of that, she gets cursed and turned into this toad-like creature. It would be bad for any character, of course, to be transformed into this creature, but it's really perfect for Stella because she is the character who has been the most obsessed with how she presents herself. They took away everything she held close to her heart, which is her royal status, her beauty. This is also the moment where Brandon and Stella probably become my favorite couple in the show. When Stella gets turned into this toad creature, she is trying to hide from Brandon before she finds a way to go back to her ordinary self. She does not want Brandon to see her like that. What was a bit odd to me here is that when she says something along the lines of, "Oh, Brandon cannot see me like this," she's very adamant about it, the girls just instantly agree with her, which is probably something teenage girls would do, but I'm not sure. I think it would be a bit more sweet if they would try to console her and tell her that Brandon doesn't love her just for her looks, but for who she is inside. And if he freaks out, well, he's not really worthy of her in the first place. But obviously, Stella just wouldn't listen, wouldn't even wanna entertain that idea and would still say, "No way, I am showing myself to him like this." After that, girls would honor her wishes and still helping her hide. Well, basically, I would not change the result, but I would change the attitude the girls have towards her, which is not a bad attitude by any means, but you know, that little detail would be really nice in my opinion. But instead, they just agree that, yeah, no boyfriend can see you like this. You know what? Girls are taught that their self-worth is tied to their youth and beauty, and if they are not conventionally beautiful or are getting old, they are not worth of love, which sadly is a theme that probably most likely resonated with a lot of children. It's sad, but it's true, so that's why I really like this whole storyline. Anyway, after all this, it's revealed that even though Flora tried to put a spell on him, meaning on Brandon, it didn't really work, and he has been seeing Stella in her toad monster form all along. He just didn't say anything and was playing along, probably not to tip Stella off, which is very refreshing because up until this point, we've seen Brandon as this flirty, a bit vain guy, but in this moment, we see that he actually really deeply cares for Stella, and it's followed by this scene between them, which I think is extremely cute and a very important one too.
And you, even though I look like this, you didn't run away?
What, me run away from a beautiful person with a great big heart and a wonderful soul? Come on, girls, tell her what you see when you look at her.
I see an awesome person who's never afraid to say what's on her mind.
Who is cheerful, lighthearted, and fun.
A kind of crazy fairy who always makes me laugh.
And I see a loyal, warm, and loving friend.
Do you really think all that of me? I thought people just saw me as pretty.
You know, after these heartwarming moments, she turns back to her normal self. I really love this storyline. It's one of my favorite storylines, if not my favorite storyline in this whole show. It's sweet and a much needed treat. Not to mention that even though all this happened, she still needs to earn enchantix. So up until this point, I was really excited to see where they would take her character. Stella earns her enchantix through saving her father. I think his name is Radius, which I was a bit disappointed by. It's obvious she really loves her father, and it's definitely not a bad turn to take the story considering how he's been treating her lately. And even though her father was brainwashed by magic and basically disowned her own daughter, she still sacrificed herself to save him, which is a very noble sacrifice, don't get me wrong, but for some reason I was expecting her to save Chimera for a second. Judging from the way they introduced her, Chimera is introduced through this weird contrast with Stella. Even her color palette is a complete opposite to the Stella's color palette, and I really thought that they would be playing off of that dynamic. So I thought that we'd get a moment where her, meaning Chimera's mother, would have gone all crazy after realizing that she lost her influence she's been building up, turning against everyone, including her own daughter, basically throwing her daughter under a magic bus. But Stella would have stepped in, since even though she's being pushed out and basically almost destroyed by them, she's still Princess of Solaria and is ready to stand up for her people, which includes Chimera. Up until this point, we've seen Stella benefit from her royal status, so it would be a really nice wrap up of her character, because we would have seen her stepping up, giving back to her people and back to Solaria. So her saving Chimera, I genuinely think it would have been something more there, but what we got was not too bad either, for sure, so I'm not complaining at all. Stella's whole arc is more or less consistent in my opinion compared to others. It's examined pretty well in season 3. Tekna's sacrifice was confusing. First of all, it felt weird and a bit out of place. It feels like they just wanted to give Tekna her enchantix without really touching upon on the themes of her home planet. Tekna's sacrifice is stepping through a collapsing portal to save Andros. I was so confused. First of all, how did she gain her enchantix here? Who from her home planet did she save? At first I thought that maybe someone from Zenith is there on Andros, and also I thought she only saved Andros, but apparently by closing the portal she saved the whole magical dimension. Like, feel free to correct me here if I'm wrong, but that's how I checked the information on Winx wiki. Of course, this whole magic dimension includes Zenith, her home planet, I think. Even if that is the case, her sacrifice is way too vague and so irrelevant to her character arc. It feels like they wanted to tie up that plotline while giving one of the girls enchantix on the way, and it just happened to be Tekna. Needless to say, it's my second least favorite way of any of them gained enchantix. My least favorite being the blooms. There's emotional impact in Tekna dying, but for me it just felt so emotionally weightless. I mean, I knew she would be coming back, but her sacrifice was just so odd for me. So what should have happened? Well, first of all, give Tekna something to do. For God's sake, please give this girl more. She can be such a good character. So what's her character arc besides I don't do emotions? If they wanted to be just that, wouldn't it be nice if they just delved in that whole concept a little deeper? Just one episode, maybe a flashback of her growing up in Zenith with her parents restricting her and teaching her that practical and logical solutions are always superior to emotional ones. Maybe adding a short scene of her getting left out on a playground because the children are already like split into even groups or something, and adding her would be logical, though she shouldn't feel sad since it's irrational to be upset about something like that. As a result, Tekna biting her tongue and pushing down her feelings for her whole life. I know it's super silly and extremely simple, but something like that would give her character so much more context, and that's what I desperately miss for her is context. And don't get me wrong, her character arc being I don't do emotions, I'm illogical and stuff is not bad, but it's not utilized. Also, maybe we could meet her parents or one of her parents who doesn't really approve how Tekna has become emotionally involved with her friends and Timmy, claiming that it makes her vulnerable and therefore an easier target for enemies or something. But later in the episode, after some strained bickering between Tekna and her parents, she would sacrifice herself to save them. Her parents would cry, apologizing for pushing Tekna away for all these years, telling her that they are proud of the girl she's becoming. So basically a vulnerable moment Tekna never really got from her parents. And boom, Tekna gains her enchantix here. Everyone's happy. Definitely not the best way, but I think it's still better than what we got. Plus, we just have more information on her background. Tekna's arc heavily relies on her learning to express her emotions. It's like her main thing. She does make some progress, so when in season 3 she is asked to sacrifice that again, even though she already has her enchantix. For context, there is this moment when she stands in front of these mirrors and is given a choice to either keep her emotions and go back to her life where she is happy with her friends and her boyfriend, or to give them up and get the stars that they desperately need to defeat Valtor. It definitely has some weight to her story. It is difficult to see her giving up and completely backtracking on all the progress she had so far, but still, all that seems a bit too surface level, since that same thing had been resalvaged over and over and over again, many times at that point. I would be really glad to see a story delving more into her culture and giving information on what kind of background she comes from that would explain this deep emotional suppression, or if it's not that, just explore the consequences of what pushing your feelings down for the sake of logic and rationality can do to a person. It's actually very self-destructive, but sadly we don't get any of that. Aisha, who was one of the stronger additions in season 2, gets less to do in season 3 than she deserved in my opinion, even though we get to see her home planet Andros many times. In one of the battles, Valtor takes her eyesight, making Aisha blind, which is probably a direct callback to her season 2 fears, when it's shown that she is afraid of darkness and loneliness. Soon Aisha is presented with a choice to either cure her blindness or save the mermaid queen, who's also from Andros obviously. In self-sacrifice, she chooses to save the mermaid queen. This act is consistent with her character and everything by itself makes sense, but I am still not happy with it. Yes, if taken individually, all these aspects make sense for her character, but it somehow feels disjointed from one another. Plus, there's not any meaningful character development going on. You could argue that her accepting her blindness is a heroic and therefore a development, but shouldn't it be something more personal to her? She is a good character. Why not explore her more? The sacrifice she makes is it's a sacrifice, not the sacrifice. It doesn't feel personal to her. You know what I mean? I feel like every character would do exactly the same in this exact situation. I would change her gaining enchantix, obviously, and the one main thing I would change is obviously make her close the portal instead of Tekna. For what we already know about Aisha is that she was raised in a very strict and rigid environment, so her arranged marriage storyline could be used to build on that. Like, a cherry on top, finalizing her independence arc and choosing herself over overbearing and outdated traditions. Sorry for intruding, but I'd like to say a word or two about the redesign I'm doing for Musa. Musa is a singer and the fairy of music, obviously. In her civilian form, she seems to be wearing low-waist jeans and a red crop top. Her main colors are mainly red. I can't quite tell in which genre she usually performs because it tends to be varied from season to season, but I know I wanted to give her something that feels true to her style but also still more fun. I do like her original dress, but I think there could be a version more true to her character and her aesthetics. So I went with this low-waisted, sparkly, wide leg pants. I think those are called flare pants. And I did the same with her crop top. I also adjusted her ponytails. Honestly, don't quite know why, but it just felt right. Overall, my goal with her redesign was to make the silhouette more fun, and I think I did a really good job with this one. I really like how her redesign turned out overall. Probably my favorite, I don't know, but let me know what you think, okay? Let's go back to the video now. So in my version, when Aisha finds out that her parents plan to marry her off to a guy she never met, she obviously freaks. And also we see her parents telling her that. In the show, it happens off screen. Her parents try to explain that being a princess comes with a set of responsibilities and she has to do it for her people. Stuff we've seen in other media gazillion times, but Aisha still stands her ground and tells her parents,
Then I don't want to be a princess.
basically denouncing her inheritance and storming out from Andros to Alfea back to her friends. Then, shit hits the fan on Andros, and Aisha, alongside Winx girls, goes back, obviously, because she still cares about her planet, her people, and her parents, even though she said she doesn't want to be their princess anymore. She steps up and goes into the portal, saving everyone on the planet. Another detail I'd change is the portal threatening only Andros, which I'm still not sure if in the show it's threatening only Andros or the whole magical dimension, but whatever. I would make the portal threatening only to Andros. And I know that would basically mean that the stakes are lowered, but it's not always a bad thing. With the portal threatening only Andros, it just makes more personal to Aisha. Anyway, she saves it by gaining enchantix and barely makes it back. After all that, her parents would be like,
"Oh, we are so proud of you. You grew up so fast and became this beautiful princess and a very strong fairy."
And Aisha replies,
So if you want me back, if you really want me to be a princess, you have to trust me to make my own decisions, like who to marry, for example.
They agree, they hug, they obviously call off the wedding, and maybe even a tear or two roll down a couple cheeks. The end. And listen, I know it's very corny and pretty much filled with tropes, but it would give Aisha some agency and a backbone, which is very characteristic to her, and also the whole arc would be very consistent with the themes of growing up, becoming an adult, and accepting your responsibilities, but not at the cost of your values and beliefs, which is also, I think, a very important message. And since doing that, meaning growing up and becoming an adult stuff, in many cases is not a one-way process, meaning that typically parents are also themselves are involved often and they have troubles processing that their children are grown up and they just need to trust them more. Musa's enchantix gain feels the most artificially set up and underdeveloped. Her gaining enchantix is just so unutilized and it honestly kinda boils my blood. Her arc in season 3 is thin, cycling back to her grief over her mother, and it feels more cycled than deepened. So Basically, this random girl appears at the school who coincidentally is also from her planet. We see that character in one of the first couple of episodes, and I already knew why she was introduced. She is just used as a plot device for Musa to get her enchantix. That's it. We don't get to see her home planet, and she doesn't get much character growth in any way when she gains her enchantix. Again, it's a sacrifice, not the sacrifice. It has no emotional weight for me whatsoever. I think almost anything would have been a better choice than this. They could have brought her dad back, with whom, as we learn in season 1 or season 2, I don't remember, she is shown to have some differences. So initial conflict is already there, they just had to, build an episode on that. That's it. I'm so confused about what writers want Musa to be, other than the singer of the group and a complicated relationship status girl. These are all just labels. It's not character traits. Her mom being dead is basically just a plot point. I really do not see how it affects her character in the present at all. As time goes on, she becomes more and more desaturated, if that makes sense, and Musa is just missing some emotional depth. When Musa gets to those mirror things, I already explained what they are in Techna's section, she either can bring her mom back or get the stars they are all after. I don't have a problem with that itself. Yeah, Musa definitely wants her mom back more than anything in the world because she misses her, and tempting her with bringing her back to life makes a lot of sense. And again, it's just such a plot point thing. What I would like to see in the relation of her character is how her mother's death affects her now, today. You can argue that her having a strained relationship with her dad and her singing to honor her mother can be interpreted as her being affected by that in a present, but that's not quite it though. Maybe they wanted to imply it, or they did imply it in the show, but an easy route they could have gone down would be making her an actual tomboy. Not having a mother growing up, maybe Musa would struggle with her feminine identity, meaning her attempting to be feminine on her own and struggling with what that actually means, since well, she didn't have her mother to guide her through those situations. Not that to be feminine you need a mother, but yeah, it also could have been a very cute bonding moment between her and the other girls, with them explaining and helping her with this stuff instead. Another thing I would change in her character is actually making her a tomboy. And by girls helping her, I don't mean turning her quote unquote girly, but femininity is definitely not something that is only expressed externally, right? It can mean many different things for many different people, so it would be just an interesting plotline for Musa to follow. Another thing they could have utilized with her character, in my opinion, is how she uses music as an outlet to sort through her feelings and trauma. Maybe she bases her whole identity and worth on her music too much so, like Stella does with her looks. I think that's something many people, especially artists, very much can relate to, putting your whole self-worth into this one box, and when it fails or faces any obstacles, you take it extremely personally, because if you're not good at that, then what are you good at? Especially with music, it could have had two meanings: her trying to live up to her mother's memory and legacy, and her entire self-esteem being tied to her performing. It's a genuinely interesting character arc, but well, too bad we sadly never see it explored in that way. We go to Flora's home planet for plot reasons, and that's the episode she gets her Enchantix transformation. Basically, the way she gets her Enchantix is rescuing her little sister from drowning. And I don't know what else to say here. I don't understand how that moves Flora's character arc in any meaningful way at all. Just like Musa, she suffers from lack of depth. Flora is caring, she is gentle, she is shy, maybe self-conscious, but again, it's never explored in any meaningful ways in season 3. I'm not saying that she is a badly written character or a uninteresting character. I really like Flora's character, but screen time is not there for her. I think if there was any sort of conflict introduced between her and her younger sister with any extra layers added, it would have had some emotional impact when Flora sacrifices her life to save her. But there's nothing, no conflict between their interests or anything. There's not even a conflict for Flora herself internally there. And I don't mean that they should have hated each other or something, meaning Flora and her younger sister, but even a small piece of additional context would have made this moment of her sacrificing herself infinitely better. For example, if we learn that her younger sister maybe is illegitimate or different or any sort of outcast, maybe she doesn't have powers or isn't as advanced in magic as Flora was at her age, something like that. But despite everyone side-eyeing her on Lymphia, Flora, in a true big sister fashion, is protective of Miel and stands up for her. Or if it was the other way around, Flora being the one with the talent issues but Miel excelling in magic in her own way, that would also explain why Flora is so insecure and unsure of herself. Her enchanted sacrifice would then make Flora look way more courageous, even though she's sometimes the least brave seeming or least front and center kind of character. But we get something very straightforward and kind of disappointing in my personal and very humble opinion. Flora's arc could have touched upon something similar to Tecna's. If they are keen on making Flora a shy, quiet girl, why not lean into that a little more? I think her character would be more interesting if, again, we had some context to her upbringing or culture. Her story could have been a very unique one. Girls are taught to be quiet, and traits like, being shy and staying put are generally associated with femininity, like also flowers, which coincidentally are Flora's area of expertise. If we saw through her character the toxic side of forcefully imposed or even artificially taught femininity, where she is told to be quiet, to obey, and not to ask too many questions, she would be more entertaining to watch. Not that feminine traits are to be viewed in a negative light, and not that Flora would be better off becoming a girl boss or something like that in the end. No, I think a good direction for her would be keeping her gentle nature while gaining confidence in who she is. But also, I think it would be really interesting to see her angry, because it's the complete opposite of what she's usually like. And also, anger is an emotion that is very much discouraged in young girls and is viewed as a masculine emotion, which is very stupid, obviously. And since the boyfriends are usually used as accessories to the girls anyway, why not use them as a character growth tool? I'm gonna say something some of you will not like, but please just give me a chance, hear me out. If you don't like it, that's okay, I completely understand. Helia is completely unutilized in any way, so I thought maybe instead of killing off Naboo by the end of season 4, they just should have killed Helia. It would make for a more interesting character arc for Flora, plus it's kind of symbolic that Ogron saves a flower, Flora's element, instead of saving the love of her life. So yeah, Helia would be the one to kick the bucket. And with that, Flora is obviously devastated. She starts to feel a strong emotion building up inside of her, one she was never particularly comfortable with. Rage. Up until this moment, she had been able to hold her tongue, push the anger and injustice towards her down, but now it just bursts out of her completely. She is done holding back. Flora becomes angry and lashes out at Ogron immediately, demonstrating a power we've never seen Flora show before. Girls are equally as shocked as the viewer seeing Flora like this. She completely changes face here, basically almost loses control. In an act of rage and blinded by vengeance, she traps Ogron and goes in for a well, or an implied kill. But the girls stop her. They hug her and tell her that it's not who she is, and this is definitely not what Helia, a guy who was a literal pacifist, would want Flora to do. Flora breaks down, she starts crying and stops the attack. Ogron seizes the moment and manages to escape. But it's not over. Flora is still mad. She wants to avenge Helia, and she decides that she's done suppressing her anger. Then, just like Aisha, because in the canon version, Aisha is the one experiencing all this, Flora joins Nebula, and it all plays out like it does with Aisha. Some confusion, some anger, and Flora goes through many emotions, and by the end, she finally comes to her senses and rejoins the girl, giving up on bloodthirsty vengeance. After everything is over, we see her alone, sitting on a cliff, holding the same flower that was saved with the gift of life that was meant for Helia. She holds it close to her heart, crying, and then lets the flower go in the wind. And after that, she goes back where the girls are waiting for her. The moment is bittersweet because Flora will never be the same, but it's okay because life goes on. We lose people, we change, and grief is an inseparable part of life. Honestly, even some instances of her having a hamper she needs to keep under control would go a really long way. But we got what we got. I still like her character, but yeah. And finally, Bloom. I've been hinting that I'm not quite happy about how the show treats Bloom, especially in relation to other girls, but now I wanna elaborate on everything properly. So Bloom dominates the show. She always has. She is the protagonist. It was not a problem in season 1 at all. It was okay-ish in season 2, and finally season 3 doubles down on that by making Baltor's arc deeply personal to her. Her Enchantix is definitely the most dramatic of the group and the one that bothers me most. Well, I guess Tekna basically dying can be seen as more dramatic, but whatever. As I already said, Bloom's home planet is fully gone, so there's no one for her to save to earn Enchantix. It's a really good setup, and I was expecting something impactful to come out of it. It's Bloom we're talking about here after all. If anyone is given resources and time in this show, it's definitely her. Bloom goes to this island, which is this island of dragons or something, where she meets a sorceress named Maya. She basically is there to, have that anime training montage and become stronger, but the tricks manage to find her and they attack her there. Bloom concentrates her full inner strength, believes that she will defeat Baltor, and transforms into Enchantix through sheer willpower rather than an act of sacrifice. Where have I seen that before? Oh yeah, in the end of season 1. I think power gained through I just want it hard enough situation can be forgiven very rarely. I gave it a pass in season 1 because her dragon flame power was an allegory for self-confidence and it worked once, but here it does not work at all. She literally bypasses the one rule the show set up that was supposed to make power-ups meaningful and earned. Every other girl sacrifices something real. Bloom wills herself through it on conviction alone, and the show frames it as impressive rather than a cheat. That tension between incomplete and still narratively rewarded is very on brand how the show handles her. Not to mention that it seems so lazy. Opportunities were right there and they just ignored every single one. Plus, there's so much more suspense with her that is not utilized at all. For example, with the other girls, we kind of can't tell who will be gaining Enchantix in that episode, which is okay, but with Bloom, the element of surprise is there, and the way they did it is definitely surprising since it doesn't make any sense. Surprising does not equal good, obviously. So what they could have done for her to gain her Enchantix? Thing number 1 they could have done, make Bloom save someone from Earth the Earth, remember her home planet, the one where she was growing up for 16 years, where she was loved and cared for by her adoptive parents. It would have been so sweet and it would have been a very heartwarming message. Home is not a place, or in this case, some random planet. Home is people who care about you and love you. Home is place where you can always go back to, knowing that there are people waiting for you. But you know, fine, maybe that's too cute and not dramatic enough. Then I have a better idea. Make her save Valtor. As I was watching this series, I was 99% convinced that's how she would earn Enchantix, and as I understood it, Valtor is created out of a dark spark of the dragon's flame. And doesn't that make him a candidate to be something like a part of Bloom's family? Isn't the dragon flame her family thing? I know he's not like the family, but it can be implied. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be so much more satisfying and way selfless for her to save someone who potentially her parents. And I'm not saying to forgive, obviously. I am saying save. Big difference. I personally prefer the Earth version, but anything is better than her summoning her power through sheer will. It just solidifies my biggest issue with the show, which is Bloom's unconditional favoritism. All 3 seasons just focus on Bloom, and I get it, she is the protagonist, but Winx is a team. The opening, the merchandise, the branding, it tells you 6 equal girls. Then you watch it and realize 5 of them exist primarily to react to what is happening to Bloom, occasionally get a spotlight episode and then step back. Bloom was never too much of a compelling character for me. On paper, she should be very interesting, as she starts as this insecure teenage girl who feels like she doesn't belong anywhere. The juice is definitely there, and as I said, I do like her in season 1, but I never quite connected with her afterwards, neither as a child nor as an adult. I can sympathize with her struggles, but I feel like there's a missing layer in the execution of her character development. She seems to be everything and nothing at the same time. Her most defining quality is that she is stubborn, but almost never in a way that is a flaw or an obstacle for her. It comes across more as a strong will than stubborn. You know what I mean? I think I just want her to become more flawed. As the show goes on, she is shown to be more smart, more strong, just this perfect entity basically, and flawed is definitely what Bloom lacks in my opinion. I know some of you will disagree, but she feels like a well disguised self-insert character. She has some qualities that make her stand out, but they are vague enough that anyone can go, she is like me for real for real. She kind of reminds me of a better written version of Bella Swan from Twilight. My argument is strengthened when you think about her abundant pixie locket. Do you remember what I said about pixies? In some cases, they are there to enhance some qualities for their fairies, Fluoride Chatta being the best example, but what can you tell me about locket? She is so vague. She doesn't really have a distinct personality like her peer pixies do, because if she had any traits that stand out too much, it could mirror something in Bloom too, and that's my theory, so take it or leave it, it's up to you. I know many people really love Bloom, and I get it. I'm not saying that you're wrong for that. No, if you find her relatable, good for you. Enjoy the show. It's just that I failed to connect with her character over and over again, which is a shame. I really wanted to have a bond with her, but sadly, no. Probably it's a me problem. There's also the issue of her being so shamelessly overpowered. She gains power out of nowhere. She can heal. She can see people's auras. She is the last surviving princess and heir to Domino. And she carries the one power literally every villain in the show is after, the Dragon Flame. It's not Bloom's fault in particular. And the show never really commits to the implications of what it has built. Bloom, with the full potential of the Dragon Flame, is supposed to be the most powerful being in existence, and the level of power displayed decreases exponentially across seasons to a point where it becomes almost ridiculous because the show still needs new villains to be credible threats. While it's not specifically the Bloom problem, it's still a problem that affects her character nonetheless. Overall, I just wish her character was more, maybe grounded, and the time given to her was utilized in more meaningful ways. Let me interrupt a little quick so I can explain what my thought process was for Aisha. Aisha is a fairy of the ocean and tides. Her powers is Morphix, which is basically a kind of pink water that she controls the solidity and the form of. I think her transformation dress looks pretty cool. I would go for a greenish blue instead of full of green she originally has. The reason being, she is essentially a fairy of water and ocean, as I just said, and that color hue makes me think of water more. I wanted to do something between sporty and elegant because, as we learned, that Aisha is the most physically active and physically the most strong one out of the group, while she is still being Princess of Andros. So I tried to find something in between those two. Since she likes to dance, I referenced some of the outfits from early 2000s dancing stuff. I also added the transparent pink fabric again to add some, I guess, royal look to her fairy outfit. I'm not sure if you can see them, but I did add some pearls in her design as well. So I think I really like the result actually. But again, I really do like her original look as well. So yeah, this is Aisha's redesign here. And now let's go back to whatever I'm talking about at this point in the video. So something really funny happened, and by funny I mean sarcastic and frustrating. I somehow lost my Tecna recording. I remember having it and even naming the file, but I probably deleted it thinking it was something else. It's funny because I've been complaining that Tecna did not get much screen time. Meanwhile, I literally do that same thing to her, so I thought about redrawing the whole thing and recording it again, but that would take too much time. So for a video that will probably get around 1,000 views, I didn't feel like spending another 3 to 4 hours on it, so we have to work what we have. Anyway, I'll just show you and describe you what I did for her redesign real quick, and we can move on onto the next one soon. I think Tecna's transformation outfit is probably the worst one out of the 6, and I don't think it's the suit, it's more this weird pointy hat. It makes her look like she's working for Santa as an elf, so needless to say I got rid of it, especially because Tecna has the most fun colored hair. I really love pink hair in character designs. As I understand it, they wanted her style to feel more futuristic, sci-fi-esque, so I kept her full bodysuit, and I think her bodysuit looks cool. If you look at her civilian outfits, she looks like someone who prioritizes comfort and practicality over looks, which definitely fits her character a lot.
I hear the guys from Red Fountain are really cute. Guys? As if I care about that. Then why are you dressed like an absolute diva? That's besides the point. You attend a ceremony, you dress accordingly.
So I decided to give her this interesting looking hoodie, which is a choice I'm not quite sure about. Final result is, I guess, alright, but I do still prefer this over her original look though. But there's still room for improvement here. I know her fairy form is probably the most disliked by fans as well, so yeah, let me know what you think about this one. Yeah, this is Tecna for you. Let's go back to the video now. So, Special Boys. So here I was supposed to put a recap of season 4 and talk about that, but as I am writing this script, which is already way longer than I expected, I decided to occasionally reference it instead if needed. Anyway, I now wanna talk about the specialists. And oh boy, I have the ammunition. On paper, Winx Club is about girl friendships, and they do occasionally get some sweet friendship moments. Like, I don't think I mentioned it when I was covering season 2, but one of my favorite parts of the show was the friendship between Musa and Aisha. They bond over feeling like outcasts, and their relationship is developed across multiple episodes. I really like how they bond. I think it's really cute. I wish they kept focusing on their friendship more. But Winx is also a show that spent a significant portion of its runtime on romantic relationships with a group of boys who, with one or two exceptions, are among the least developed characters in the entire series. The specialists, Sky, Brandon, Riven, Timmy, and Helia, exist in a peculiar narrative limbo. They are present enough to matter, but rarely developed enough to be interesting. They are the boyfriends that is for most of the show the full extent of their function. Let's start by talking about Sky and Bloom. They are the central romance of the series and also its most frustrating one. Well, I guess the most frustrating one is Musa and Riven, but they are definitely up there. The relationship starts famously on a lie. Throughout season 1, Bloom grows close to who she believes is Brandon, only to find out secrets within secrets that not only Sky had switched identities with his squire Brandon, but also that he is engaged to the other person named Princess Diaspro. Okay, so not only Sky did lie about his identity to his girlfriend, and yes, as I remember, Bloom was his girlfriend at this point. Not only was he cheating on Diaspro with Bloom without Bloom even knowing, this man also had the audacity to start ghosting her when he thought that Bloom was descended from the three evil witches. They make hating Sky so easy. I really dislike his character. He does all this and he is not even likable. He has no personality. This information about Kai lying to her destroys Bloom, obviously, deepening her sense from season 1 that she does not belong there. That's the main reason she leaves Althea and goes back to Earth. After some stuff happens, he apologizes to her, they reconcile, and the identity swap is very quietly filed away as this quirky season 1 plot point rather than the serious breach of trust it actually was. You know who Sky reminds me of? Sky reminds me of a guy who has no personality at all, has never known a struggle in his life, is extremely spoiled, comes from a very rich family, obviously, and is the most bland man you've ever met. And for some reason, your friend, who is beautiful, smart, just starts dating him, starts obsessing over him for some reason. I know I just criticized how Bloom is handled in the show, but Sky is just so much worse because at least Bloom has likable traits, but Sky, he's just a vessel. And the relationship is just a bad role model. They constantly have the dumbest misunderstandings. There is just no connection between them there at all. Not to mention how the show treats Diaspro as an obstacle to their wonky ass relationship. That girl is a victim of Sky as much as Bloom. But no, they paint Diaspro as this evil woman, not as a teenager girl who was strung along and then discarded by Sky when he met someone new. And I know it was probably an arranged marriage between Sky and Diaspro, but still that does not excuse him lying to Bloom. Sky has a tendency to become jealous, overprotective, and even possessive of Bloom whenever he believes their relationship is threatened. The show frames this as a character trait rather than, a huge red flag, which does say something about its understanding of what a healthy relationship looks like. Sky is possessive, Bloom is reactive and emotionally volatile around him specifically, and the two of them spend as much time breaking up and reconciling as they do actually being a couple. There's nothing of substance to their relationship. I am really sorry for hating on them so hard, but they are the main couple in the show. They should have been handled in a better way. And that is the core problem with Sky as a character as well. Remove him from his relationship with Bloom and there's almost nothing left. He's the prince, he is the leader of the specialists, he is the Bloom's boyfriend. Those three facts account for nearly everything the show does for him. Riven and Musa, Musa and Riven. I'm not gonna lie, I was entertained by this couple at least, but only sometimes. Mostly, especially in season 4, I found myself really frustrated with them. Riven is the most interesting specialist, which is definitely not a high bar, but it's worth saying clearly. That being said, he is definitely the worst person in the group easily. He is difficult, he is emotionally closed off, prone to jealousy and cruelty. It also makes his relationship with Musa the most complicated and, depending on how you read it, the most irresponsible one. He sucks so bad in season 1, which is kind of okay. It's the start of a series. We have time to grow and give him consistent character growth, right? Right? In season 1, he constantly taunts his teammates. He is shown to get physically frustrated, which is a big fat red flag in my book, and he is just such a jerk in general for no reason to girls too. I guess he does not like the spoiled prince Sky and Brandon or whatever, but why he is so hateful towards the girls? It left such a bad taste in my mouth. In season 1, he helps and dates Darcy, who, as we know, wants to see the girls' demise. He has a short temper, is always angry, always jealous. In short, there's a lot of room to grow, and they needed to make him grow fast since in season 1 he is downright unlikable. Despite that, Musa immediately falls for Riven upon seeing him be standoffish and cool with the rest of the group. This is the first warning sign the show just ignores. Musa is attracted to his indifference and even unhinged behavior. The show plays this as a romantic tension, which is a choice that has aged very poorly. What follows is a relationship built on Riven being emotionally unavailable, Musa pursuing him anyway, brief moments of apparent warmth, and then Riven retreating again. Repeat for several seasons. Listen, these kind of relationships are real. They do happen. Some of them are even worse than that. I don't have a problem with depicting that kind of relationship. I've said something like that in every video. Depiction is not the problem. Problem is how the show treats the subject. And if the show acknowledged that their relationship is so desperately unhealthy, it would have been fine, but they do not. Honestly, I didn't even understand when they were together and when they were not. I think neither did Musa. It is implied that they are finally a proper couple by the end of season 3, I think. Riven's character, like many storylines in the show, had potential that they didn't quite handle well. And listen to me, I like a bad boy who needs a redemption arc, probably more than the next person. I love it. I love a bad boy character, okay? But the main problem with the Riven's development that it is very inconsistent. They present the same problem over and over again with Riven, making me feel like that he didn't really learn much from the earlier episodes. One moment he seems to have grown up and starts being a relatively normal person, the next he switches back to his raging, emotionally immature self. The relationship's lowest point comes in season 4. Riven dismisses the expertise of Jason, a music producer helping Musa with her career, and when Musa asks him if being overly critical was his way of supporting her, Riven tells her to just have her new friend support her instead and storms off. Come on, so exhausting. By the way, this storyline with Jason does not paint Musa in a very good light either. It is said that she does have a crush on him, so Riven being jealous is actually not that crazy. And overall, in season season 4, the relationships is depicted in such a weird light, and as a result of all that, Musa also struggles as a character, especially in season 4. She despises Riven by then, probably because she is tired of his nonsense. Riven is actively unsupportive of something that matters deeply to Musa, her music, which is also tied to her grief over her mother, and despite all that, he still feels threatened of her success. I remember, I think in season 3, they were teasing them breaking up, or at least Musa thinking about breaking up, and that's why I really miss the scenes between her and Aisha.
Well, I've been thinking lately, and I'm planning on breaking up with him.
But you two seemed to be getting closer last year.
Yeah, that was last year, but this year, nothing at all.
Aren't you being a little rash? Maybe you should give it time.
No way.
I mean, how can you stay with someone who doesn't fully trust you?
Well, that's easy. You just don't. Oh, I'm sorry, Musa. I didn't mean...
No, you're right, Aisha. I really need to figure out what I need to do and just do it.
Like a lot of media aimed at young girls in the early 2000s, the show had a troubling tendency to frame emotional unavailability and jealousy in boys as evidence of deep feeling rather than as what they are, problems. Riven and Musa together are the show's most watchable couple precisely because they are the most dysfunctional one. But the show never fully commits to examining what it is actually depicting. It wants the drama of a difficult relationship without the responsibility of saying clearly that this is not what love should look like. Musa deserved better, just like Riven deserved a consistent arc. If they wanted to show us what a dysfunctional relationship looks like, they could have done that by just letting Musa and Riven grow apart and realizing that they are not good for each other and then they are happier outside their relationship. Instead, I found myself hating their moments in season 4 especially. I like drama, I like seeing my characters have relationship problems, love triangles, jealousy subplots. I am sadly a sucker for that, but with them there is no yearning, there's no mutual understanding. I didn't find myself rooting for them at all. It feels like there is no real connection between these two. I fail to see a reason why they are together. The sweetest moment with them I can think of is when Nabu dies. Nabu and Riven are shown to grow close, especially in season 4, and I think Nabu is like Riven's best friend. And when he dies, we see Riven crying by himself, which is a very rare vulnerable moment for him. Musa goes to him, sits by his side, and comforts him. That was the most genuine and moving moment for me with Riven specifically. There are some moments of him being vulnerable or maybe even kind, but they are very few and far in between. Despite really wanting to like him, the show wasn't giving me much to latch onto. So Riven could have been my favorite specialist or even a favorite character, but well, what can you do, I guess? Flora and Helia are a whole. Both of their characters are so painfully underdeveloped that I am not sure what to say about their relationship. Helia is a pacifist artist who writes Flora poems and is consistently kind to her, which is obviously a good thing, and Flora is just there devoted to him. Their relationship seems nice. I'm not saying that it's bad, it's sweet, but the first 4 seasons there's not much to work with them. I know that they do get some kind of jealousy storyline, my favorite, in season 7 or 5, I have no idea, but yeah. There's almost nothing I can say about them, and there's almost nothing I can say about Helia. So yeah, that's Flora and Helia. Timmy and Tekna are barely a romantic relationship. That doesn't mean I dislike them as a couple though. They just don't really get to do much, just like Flora and Helia, but there's more substance to their relationship. One thing I noticed is that the show consistently surrounds Tekna with technology-themed everything. I probably already said that earlier. Her pixie is technology, her storylines almost always revolved around technology, her boyfriend is the IT guy of the group. They struggle to give her anything beyond her interests. I think in season 2 they try to give their relationship some kind of storyline that addresses that specific issue, but it doesn't seem to go anywhere or resolve.
I went out and got you a new heatsink.
Wow, you got me a present. Thanks.
The model's just been upgraded, so it'll keep your computer from getting too tired.
That's very thoughtful of you, Timmy.
So do you like it?
It's very nice, but it's a gift for my computer. It's not something for me.
Oh. Techna, I've been thinking.
Yes?
The tensor incantation circuitry software has some really cool features.
Look, Timmy, I'm sorry, but I'll be dealing with software all day and...
Oh, I understand.
I came here to get a break from schoolwork, alright?
But...
They just make up and that's it. Timmy exists to fly ships and provide exposition. They do seem to enjoy each other's company, and I think they care about each other the most out of all the couples. Meaning, Timmy cares about Tekna the most, which includes her friends, and same goes for Timmy. Tekna cares about Timmy the most, which includes specialists. When Tekna goes missing or quote unquote dies, I swear everyone just moves on so fast. Basically, Timmy was actually trying to locate her. If not for him, I am sure Tekna would be still in Omega Dimension, probably frozen. They are an okay couple. They are not problematic, but they are not super memorable either, so probably my favorite couple in the show I'm talking about is Brandon and Stella. Their relationship has way more personality. They actually seem to understand and like each other's company, which is something that surprisingly is lacking in many couples, in my opinion. The big thing that makes them work is that Brandon has slightly more personality than the other specialists, and Stella is one of the show's strongest characters. The identity swap in season 1 affects them too. Stella finds out Brandon is not actually the prince and is understandably upset, but she does forgive him and tells him that she doesn't care if he is non-royal. It is a cleaner resolution than Sky and Bloom's, partly because Stella is written with more agency. At first in season 1 and partially season 2, I thought they were pretty rigid as a couple, a flirty guy paired with the shopping-loving diva sassy girl, but throughout the show they tease each other and seem to have more chemistry compared to others. I already talked about their best moment in season 3, so I won't be getting into it again, but was the moment that solidified Stella and Brandon as the most heartwarming couple in the show for me. And no, we do not talk about season 4 and that stupid storyline with Mitzi and everything. It's just so unnecessary. So unnecessary. It's like the writers don't know how to advance a relationship in a meaningful way without introducing some kind of cheap drama, which is mostly a third girl or a third guy in their dynamic. I'm sure some of you think that the best couple is actually Aisha and Naboo, so put down your pitchforks because I do partially agree with you. Besides the very beginning when Naboo casually stalks Aisha, which doesn't sit right with me. Why did he have to be creepy like that? But after that, Naboo is the best boyfriend in the show. He was patient, kind, honest, and notably did not get jealous, a trait Sky and River are notorious for. He is also crucially competent on his own terms. He is a wizard, not a specialist, which means he can actually contribute to a fight alongside the girls rather than orbiting uselessly around them. Which is something I wanna give kudos to Winx for, because usually it's the girls who are less powerful, but in this case, specialists are so useless. It's crazy. Naboo has his own agency and his own abilities, which makes him feel like a partner rather than an accessory. So there's a lot of things going on with Naboo that I really like. They are the most well-functioning, healthy relationship in the show, and the only reason I prefer Stella and Brandon is that I just find watching them more entertaining, and it's just a personal preference. But if for some reason you insist on modeling your relationship after any of the couples in the show, Please don't, obviously. Aisha and Nabu are the go-to in my humble opinion. He is caring and they actually like each other. A good, healthy relationship on screen. Until characters in kids shows is something I weirdly always admired because that is always treated as a taboo subject even though it's a part of life, and I think portraying grief in a cartoon, while it can be extremely challenging, is admirable to try. That being said, it should be treated with the depth and delicacy it deserves. Bad things happen. People lose each other all the time, sadly, so how do we keep going? Let's see how Winx Club handles these themes. As you probably already know, Nabu dies by the end of season 4. At that point, Aisha and him are engaged, and if you are watching the Nickelodeon version, he asked her to be his forever girlfriend, whatever the hell that means. I just found it funny that they censored that. Basically, everything is going great for them when every single couple has some friction and fight. Their relationship seems to be going very smoothly. But you know what? Just how this show likes to reward and uplift Bloom, it really likes to punish Aisha. There are many issues with his death. Throughout season 4, the girls are given these gifts or spells, one of which allows them to bring someone back to life. But it can be done only once, so they have to be careful. When Nabu is lying there dead or nearly, obviously they want to use that gift to bring him back, but the villain Ogron snatches it from them and uses it on a flower.
Ethereal fairies, I beg of you, please, give me the spell of life! Ogron! Give it back to me now!
Oops, how careless of me. I've wasted the gift of destiny to give back life to this small flower. Such a waste. Oh well.
He disappeared!
That scene is so unbelievably cruel. It's not that Nabu dies, it's that the thing that could have saved him is destroyed so pointlessly. There are so many problems with this scene, and it's not the way they chose to kill Nabu or even that they decided to do it in the first place. No, first of all, for one, Bloom, girl, you have some healing powers? Maybe use them? Maybe try to help him at least. Even if it fails, maybe try to use them. But you know what? Okay, maybe there's some weird mechanic we don't know about. Then tell me why, when the only chance to save his life is literally slowly descending from the sky, this little fragile thing. Meanwhile, mind you, they are in an open battlefield and everyone is around. We see Bloom, we see Flora, we see Musa, we see Tekna, we see the specialists. Well, everyone is there. And again, it's an open battlefield. So why Ogron manages to snatch that gift? Maybe do something. Like, why is everyone just watching? Aisha is there losing her shit because her boyfriend just died. But what the hell are you guys doing? Do something. It's just... it frustrates me so much. They don't lift a finger. It is so frustrating. After all that plays out and Nabu is essentially killed by Ogron, but I would say that he was killed by negligence from his friends, Aisha is reasonably furious. She wants to make him pay. She wants to avenge her boyfriend. I can't even imagine what she was going through at that moment. Having the love of your life like that would make anyone go crazy. But the weird thing is no one is understanding or tries to be there for her in her anger, which is essentially what she needs right now. The girls feel a bit dismissive. I just feel like they all fail her so badly in the worst moment of her entire life. I'm not saying that they should have made her into this vengeful, bloodthirsty fairy. I think Aisha's grief was handled relatively well. I'm just really disappointed in girls and how they react. It didn't feel like they had her back at all. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's really how I perceive the situation. Nabu deserved better than to be a plot device for Aisha's grief arc, in my opinion. The specialist's fundamental issue is that the show built a world where the girls are the protagonists, the source of power, and the drivers of every major plot, which is good, and then insisted on pairing each of them with with a boy anyway, as if a girl without a boyfriend was somehow incomplete. Most of the couples honestly would be better off as single. Not to mention some of the specialists have way more chemistry with each other than they ever had with their girlfriends. If they wanted like this 5 or 6 boys or whatever, you know that straight girls and boys can be friends, right? Friendship between boys and girls is so rarely depicted in the show, especially in the show of that time. But I think all of their characters would have had so much more depth. They would be better off if they were just friends. But no, they have to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Basically, they seem like they are a structural requirement, a concession to a certain idea of what a show for girls should look like. One of the most frustrating things for me is that the girls have to stop saving the world periodically to worry about whether their boyfriend is upset with them or not. Musa has to set aside her grief and her music to manage Riven's jealousy. Bloom basically has to leave Althea because of how Sky treated her. Winx was ahead of its time in some ways, but the romantic relationship are the weakest storylines. And don't get me wrong, I love romance in the shows. Shipping is so fun and one of my favorite parts of watching literally anything, but it has to be done well. They don't even have to be done well, they have to be good enough. But in that aspect, the writing problems are showing a bit too hard for me. So let me know what you think about the romantic relationships, because I think there are some good bits, but bad ones are way more. They keep the good ones in the shadows, basically. Okay, we've talked about almost everything. As I said before, the show and the world of Winx is pretty massive. I'm aware of the million comics, movies, remakes, and spin offs the show has, but I really wanted to stay focused on what is the core of the whole series. But in the darkness, there's another lurking, waiting to be addressed, to be part of this conversation. Where's there's Winx, there always whispers of them. I already made a video about W.I.T.C.H. Feel free to check it out if you want to know my thoughts in depth about that show. People seem to constantly compare W.I.T.C.H. to Winx, or vice versa, maybe because they are both Italian series, maybe because they both feature magical girls and transformations, maybe because they were airing around the same time. Also, they both have a redhead protagonist. Initially, both shows have 5 girls and they all have magical powers. I could go on and on about the similarities between the shows, but despite everything, every similarities they share on paper, I think these two are very different shows and very different stories. I have seen both, and most importantly, I grew up watching both. So, which one do I prefer? I personally prefer W.I.T.C.H. Listen, as much as I love Winx and I think it's very fun and very whimsical, as much as they did what Disney should have done with W.I.T.C.H, as much as their outfits slap and are iconic and timeless, for me personally, W.I.T.C.H is just a better story with better writing. I think the girls of W.I.T.C.H are more fleshed out, their friendships feel more natural and dynamic, and the girls are all equal, which is a big thing for me. I think it all boils down to what you prefer to see in a story and which one you saw first, which one you were actively watching as you were growing up. So obviously there is no right answer because I can present very strong cases for both series. Tonally and thematically, these shows are very different in my opinion. But yeah, feel free to disagree with me in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. But again, I don't want to pin these two shows against each other. They're both really good. There's just so much to be said about the show, how in some aspects it was way ahead of its time and in others it was a bit behind. I feel like I've been criticizing a lot, but I want to bring up things I actually really enjoyed and appreciated about it. Winx was such an unique phenomena that I think can only happen in the time frame it came out. The first and the most important thing is how an Italian, previously barely known studio was able able to deliver such a massive success of a show. It took risks that many studios were afraid to take at the time. I'm looking at you, Disney, and which, like the animation style, and most importantly, it took its audience seriously, leaning fully into the twin demographic. I really like how diverse the characters are. There was definitely something in the show for everybody. Even though I think Bloom is the way she is, there's still a lot of positives to her characters too. For example, I really love her parents, meaning her Earth parents, obviously. They are loving and understanding. I really like the relationship portrayed between them. I think it's really, really sweet. All of the girls have really good qualities and I really like them. Yes, there are many ups and downs, but it's important to acknowledge what kind of cultural significance this show had in the mid to late 2000s. One thing I also wanted to touch upon, but not get into too much, is the representation, more specifically the body types the girls have. I think representation matters a lot, especially in the show like Winx, where the majority of the demographic are young children. The girls are pretty diverse, not only in looks, but as I said, in personality and style. I'm not here to complain about their body stylization choices. I'd say they are stylized pretty well, do all kind of look like teenagers, or definitely look like something teenagers would be drawn to, unlike in later seasons when they literally look like they're in elementary school. And also, they whitewashed Flora there. I did not even know about that show. It looks so bad. I'm sorry, it looks really, really bad. The thing is, they are just all tall, slim girls, and I mean like the whole school. They all have the same body type. There's no even difference in the height, which I know they are all the same probably because it's the easiest to animate and recycle, but some diversity would be nice. You know, at least between the main six, height differences can go a long way, for example, and not to mention the, the million different body types they could have used, but whatever. Overall, I am really, really thankful for the show, even though there are so many plot holes and just bad decisions made throughout. It still holds such a dear place in my heart. You gotta give credit where credit is due, and the credit goes to the designs and the stylization of the whole show in general. As a kid who drew constantly, I was so inspired and influenced by Winx. On a rewatch, I was randomly just having these flashbacks of drawing some of the outfits on paper, especially in season 4. I don't know what happened in season 4 for me, but I remember drawing every single girl in every single outfit they wore that season. And if you've seen it, you know that it's a lot of outfits. Even though I was never really into mainstream fashion and clothing, I always really, really liked interesting clothes that didn't look like everyday wear. And Winx absolutely had that look that I felt drawn to. The outfits, especially in early seasons, are so fun. They are so iconic. I love their dresses. They did a fantastic job with the outfits. Again, in the first seasons, we don't talk about the stuff I've seen from season 5, 6, 7, and 8. My only criticism in that regard is that as the show goes on, the outfits kind of blend together. In the first seasons, the girls all have this distinct style, sense of fashion, and more importantly, they all have their own color. While in season 4, for example, they all start wearing kind of a random clothes that any of them could wear. The only thing that feels unique to them is the color palette, and even that is all over the place sometimes and is not consistent. I've seen some screenshots and some clips from the later seasons, and you can see that that problem persists and even gets worse. Let me interrupt for a minute and give you an update about Flora's new look. I actually really like Flora's transformation dress. I think it fits her character and her powers perfectly. It looks like a flower, it's pink, but since I am doing redesigns, I definitely had to change it to something new. With her power being, well, Flora, I was thinking more of a field fairy direction. I wanted to give her a lot of puffy, wavy shapes since plants and flowers usually follow that pattern. I brought in more green as her complementary color, so the pink has something to contrast against. Overall, I still think that I prefer her initial show design over this, but you know, it still didn't turn out too bad, so yeah. Working on this video has been insane. It's been crazy, but I am so happy I'm done with this. I'm not exaggerating. I had to record this 3 times because of some audio problems, but thank you so much for watching. Revisiting the show was so much fun. I really would love to see your opinions and thoughts in the comments, not only about the show, but about the redesigns I've been doing as well. Oh, and I always forget to mention, you can follow me on Instagram if you want to see art I'm doing outside YouTube or for YouTube as well. And please consider subscribing, liking, maybe even if you're feeling extra generous today, leaving a little comment so algorithm will deem this video worthy to show it to others. Well, this is definitely the biggest video I've done, but I really enjoyed it. So again, if you're here, thank you so much. Have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Goodbye.